Welcome to week 2 of CS 1500 command line interfaces. This week we're going to be covering the content in chapters 1 to 3 of this book, right? The Linux Command Line and Shell Scripting Bible by Bloom and Bresnahan. You will need this textbook. The first 3 chapters have been made available to you as an excerpt on Blackboard, but I cannot do that for all of the content. I would be violating copyright law, so you will need a copy of the book. Be sure you get that. The way I recommend that you go through this week is I would go ahead and skim the content, chapters 1, 2, and 3. Skim the content kind of so you know what's going to be covered. Then watch the videos, then go back and kind of fill in any holes in that content as you work through the assignment. Don't forget to take the quiz. Also, the quiz will draw from all 3 of the chapters, chapters 1, 2, and 3. Chapter 1 is a little more introductory in nature, and so is chapters 2 and 3 that mainly will be covered in the video lecture content and also then in the homework assignment. Now, the purpose of the homework assignment is just to kind of get your hands dirty a little bit, doing some of the things that will be demonstrated for you in the video lecture. So if you have questions this week, things come up as you start working through this, and any questions, observations, other troubles, be sure that you post those on the forum. You can certainly send me an email, but if you send me an email, again, with something that I think might be of use to other people, I'm going to ask you to put it on the forums. Also, sometimes that's a little faster way to get a response. Some of your fellow students have already shown great diligence in getting on there and trying to help answer people's questions and things. Very, very much appreciated. Sometimes they'll get to you in 30 minutes, and it might take me several hours, especially if it's Monday or Wednesday, because those days tend to be pretty back-to-back for me until very late in the evening or night. So that being the case, your best bet is to go to the forums first, and certainly if you've got something that doesn't have to do with the course content, but really just needs to be between us, then yeah, sure, of course, shoot me an email. But make use of those forums. You've got 90 people that are taking this course with you. So with that, we'll go straight into the content. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start my virtual machine. I have 3 virtual machines here. You may only have 1, but this is the one that I most recently installed for this course. So I click the Start button in the Oracle VirtualBox Manager, and you see that it is starting here. I'll see a console screen come up with the Linux Mint boot information, and then very quickly I'll see the graphical user interface up here. I do want to briefly show you around the graphical user interface just so you know what things are available there, although we'll be spending most of our time with the command line in Linux. But first, I want to show you some things that are outside of this. Now, you understand I'm running on a Windows operating system based computer. You see my whole desktop here. Within that, I have a window which was created by VirtualBox, and that window has an instance of another operating system, Linux Mint, running inside of it. In a short time, I'll show you how you can also go full screen and with this Linux Mint operating system that's running as well. But I want to point out a couple of other things. First of all, since this is running inside of a window, you've got kind of your usual menus at the top. These menus are provided by Oracle VirtualBox, so the operating system is unaware of these menus that are here. So that's kind of at the top of the window. Let's go down to the bottom of the window. You'll see some things over here. These belong to the operating system, okay? Just like everything else kind of inside the window that's beneath the menu bar at the top. This is inside the window, but this bar at the bottom is outside the window. If I go over to the right, I see various things here. These are things that it's a status bar, shows the status, for example, of the simulated disk drive that's available. So when there's disk activity to the virtual disk drive you created, you'll see activity there. This would be for the secondary storage, which is an optical drive, simulated optical drive. This is showing network, some audio stuff, various things like that. Okay, this is showing the status of the keyboard and mouse. because we're dealing with 2 operating systems, and so when I'm working in here, I'm working with one, and the keyboard and the mouse are kind of being captured there. And then when I click out of here, notice that icon changed a little bit. Now my keyboard is going to the Windows operating system, etc. Click back in here. Okay, so there's a lot down here, but you don't need to know all of it. I just wanted you to understand that this is being provided by Oracle, this bar right here. This bar at the top is being provided by Oracle too. So let's look at the things then that are kind of outside the operating system that we're running here that Oracle is providing. If I look at the File menu, I see there are various preferences, network operations, etc., resetting some warnings, closing something. Go to Machine. I've got the settings for the machine. That's the virtual machine that's running. That means Linux Mint in this case. This thing called Take a Snapshot, which we'll look at shortly. Some session information, we'll look at that. Some other things that we can, some signals we can send to this operating system to say, like the equivalent of hitting a reset button or sending a shutdown signal, like if you press the power button on your laptop, that sort of thing. View gives us a few things. There's full screen mode, seamless mode, which is kind of interesting, allows you to run this just like it's a window inside your regular operating system, kind of emphasizes the content, lets you take applications from out of here and just run them on your Windows desktop. Very, very, very interesting, but not something we're going to play with. Scaled mode has some applications, but we're not going to worry about it too much. Adjust window size. I think we saw last time you can do that just by dragging the corners of the windows, which is kind of nice. Auto resize guest display. So what that does is if I do adjust the size of this, it'll auto resize the display by telling the guest, hey, the size of your monitor has changed, and it'll take care of that. Take a screenshot, video capture. I've tried video capture before right here from within VirtualBox, and it blows up. So I'm doing video capture a different way. But anyway, try it. Your mileage may vary. There's some menu bar settings, status bar, etc., etc. Scale factor. If you're on a real high resolution screen and the stuff inside your virtual machine is really too small for you to read, you can scale it up right here in a very intuitive way. In fact, I'll just show you that real quick. If I change that scale, now it kind of took over my whole window when I did it. Let me change the scale factor a little more subtly. I'll go back to 100 where I was. Takes it a couple of seconds to kind of recalculate, but there it is at 100%. Let's just change it a little bit so it's a little more subtle. At 125%. Okay, so the window gets bigger, everything in there gets scaled. It doesn't look that brilliant as it scales it, not at 125%, but it's okay. I've used it before at 200% on a real high-res screen that I have that's a very small screen, and that works a treat if you need to run a virtual machine on an extremely high DPI screen. In any case, other things, devices, we'll look at some of this in a moment. I'll show you a couple settings we'll do. And then help tells you some other stuff. Again, all this is provided by VirtualBox, okay, so the operating system doesn't know anything about this. But here's something you probably want to do straight away. We're going to take a snapshot of this machine. This is really a very cool feature of working in a virtual machine, is that you can take a snapshot of the machine's state at any point, and then anytime you want, you can restore that snapshot. So if you go and totally, like mess up your installation of Mint, rather than starting over, you just go and you restore the snapshot. So that's kind of cool. So you'll want to do that. So what we might do, we need to give the snapshot a name, and since it's a snapshot, we don't probably need to call it snapshot. We'll just say, that this is original or pristine or something like that, so that we know that this was the state of the machine at some original early time. So there it is. So now I've done that, and I have saved a snapshot. Let's go to input real quick. One thing I want to point out, we go to keyboard here. You'll notice, by the way, all of these, many of these things will have, you'll see host plus and then some key indicated. For snapshot, it was host plus T. See that? Session information, host plus N. What does host mean? Well, that is the host access key that VirtualBox is looking for to know that you're trying to do something that is manipulating VirtualBox. So what is this host key? Well, the default is this. If I go into keyboard settings, you'll see the host key combination is the right control key. So if you look at your keyboard, whatever keyboard you have, you'll have a control key on the left side of the space bar somewhere, and you'll have a control key on the right side of the space bar. The right control key is the key that's on the right side. You say, oh, well, they're the same key. They're both control key. Well, they're actually not the same key. They do serve the same function, but they are distinguished in terms of the signal that your operating system gets. So it can distinguish between the right and the left. So the default is the right control key. I strongly recommend that you don't change that unless you have a particular reason to. And it's really hard to find a key that isn't being used for something else as a host key. But you'll want that because it gives you an ability to do a variety of interesting things. So it's the right control key. What, for instance, does it allow you to do? Well, if you look over here to view, for instance, there's a full screen mode, which is host plus F. See that? Host plus F. So if I hold down the right control key and press F, I'm going to go into full screen mode. And there it is. Now my background is kind of messed up because we keep scaling the screen, and Linux isn't just terribly happy about that. But that's what it is. So you'll notice now it's taking up my entire screen. Okay, so anything that I can do within Linux here, I can do now on my whole screen. And I've got these things that belong to Linux, like the menu and some other things we'll talk about in a moment, and the status things that are there, but none of the Oracle VirtualBox stuff. If I go down here to the very bottom, by default, there is this little menu in the middle. See that? File, Machine, View. That's all my VirtualBox stuff. So it's there if you want it, or you can get rid of it if you don't want it. But notice it's just kind of hanging out down there as a thin little bar. So it's very non-obtrusive. You can turn it off if you really, really don't want to see it. But now I'm going to hold down the right control key, which is my host key again, and hit F again, and we go back into the windowed mode here. Okay, so those are some capabilities that you'll want to have straight away. A couple of other things under session information or host in, you get a lot of interesting things. Find out what the exact screen resolution is that we're working with right now, how long the virtual machine's been running, etc., etc. There's some other settings here and things that you can be aware of. Configuration details also over here, etc., etc. So if you're having trouble, I might ask you, to grab some information from this, so we'll know what you're running, exactly what you're doing. So that's where that is. Let's see other things that are kind of valuable here. Under devices, there are a couple of interesting things here. We will be talking about shared folders at some point. We'll want to be sharing with the host operating system so we can save some files very easily. You've got some other settings here. You probably don't want to mess with them. I presume they're working fine for you. But this is one thing that is extremely helpful. Even as we do our assignments for this week, you're going to be doing some things at the command line, and you'll want to copy all of that text and then paste it somewhere. You could do that all within Linux if you wanted to, and upload stuff from Linux. You've got the Firefox browser here. You can install software like Chrome or other things if you like, and you could do everything from within Linux, but you might want to do it on your host operating system. So for me, that would be Windows. Maybe I just want to drop things into a Word document or something. And a way that you do that is you can have a shared clipboard. And so what you would do is I would go ahead and select bidirectional. What that means is anything that's on my Windows clipboard I can paste into Linux. Anything that's in my Linux clipboard I can paste into Windows. And that would allow me to select text in either one and paste it in the other. So for instance, I could select commands in Windows and paste it in Linux, or I could select output in Linux and paste it into Windows, like into a Word document. So probably turn bidirectional on. So I just clicked that. You'll see now that's what's selected, bidirectional. So now I have a shared clipboard between Windows and Linux. So that's very nice. Okay. So one thing, right now I'm showing no background on here because I've resized it a couple of times. You can go and change those things. If you right click, you'll see things like change desktop background, and you can choose one of the default images that are available, so that's very nice, or you can get rid of them altogether. I think for the sake of the video, I'll go ahead and turn them off. The way you do that is you go to the settings part right here, and instead of zoom, you just say no picture, and then for background gradient, we'll say none, okay? And then you can just indicate a color. I'll just say black, and there I've got the absolute, now simplest background that I can possibly have. And no matter how I change the scale of the screen, it's not, or the shape of the screen, it's not going to look funky. So I kind of like it not changing on me. Okay, so now we need to talk about how to get to a command prompt in Linux. And there are a couple of ways to do this in Linux Mint. And they could vary a little bit depending upon which desktop you're running. But I think most of the desktops do give you this terminal prompt right here. You'll see this little icon down here on the left. If you don't see it there, most of them will have some kind of a menu. It looks something like this. This is the cinnamon menu. It's very nice looking. Some of the others are a little clunkier, but also a little faster. So if you've done one of the other desktops, that's fine. But somewhere you'll find a terminal here. If you don't, usually you can search for it in this box. Oops. As I start typing term, then I see terminal right there. I could just click on it there. I could click on it here. It'll also be somewhere in within all of these things. Would it be under administration? Probably not. Probably under accessories, maybe. And then if I go down, do I find terminal here? It's not under there. Where does it live? Let's see. Maybe it is under administration. There it is. Yeah, under administration. There it is, terminal. So I could click on it right there. I could click on it right here to get to a terminal right within the desktop environment, the graphical desktop environment. So that's one way to get to the terminal, and this is the command line interface where I can enter commands and do whatever I need to do on the system. There's another way to do this, and that is using the Control and Alt keys together, and then one of your function keys, F1 through F7. So let me show you how that works. If I hit Control, hold down Control and Alt, and press 1, whoops, I did it within that terminal. We have to do it just within the graphical interface here. Control Alt and F1, and so here we are. I've got to log in. My login name is Perry, and my password is short. Not actually short. I mean it's short, like not very long. And I am now logged in to a command prompt, command line interface in this Linux installation right here. Now notice that the graphical desktop has disappeared. Okay, I'm just in a terminal window, and I could go to another one. I'll hold down Control Alt and press F2, and there's another one. So I'll log in to that one as well, and now I'm logged into the second one. So there's that one. I can do things there, and I can Control Alt F1 and go back to the first one. Control Alt F2. I go back to the second one I'm already logged into. If I need another one, Control Alt F3. And see, I haven't logged into that one yet, so there's multiple. You say, okay, I don't like that. I'd rather see the graphical user interface. Oh, that's fine. Hit Control Alt and F7, and that takes you back to the graphical user interface. Okay. Those are still there. Control Alt F1. See, I'm right back where I was. Control Alt F7. I'm back to the graphical user interface. So, what would be the advantage of running it the other way? That is, having it just like this. Well, frankly, if you're ever administering a system that you're not actually sitting at, which is something that computer science and cybersecurity people do all the time, this is the way your interface is going to look, because you're going to use Secure Shell or something like that to gain an interface like this on that machine, and this is what you're going to be seeing. Except it won't say VirtualBox at the top. But you'll have some kind of Secure Shell client, and what you see right there, with that white text on black, that's what you're going to see. So that being the case, it's a very distraction-free way for you to work and to learn. So you can certainly do that. If you'd rather, you can do it this way. One of the advantages here is, while I can go from one terminal to the other using that mechanism of just hitting the different function keys. Here, I could actually put them side by side, right? I can have multiple ones open at a time. It's really kind of the same thing, okay? It works the same way. So all we have here is we've wrapped a graphical user interface around a terminal, and we can make as many of them as we need to, okay? So, okay. Now that we have some way to access the command line, in fact we have two ways, right? Control, Alt, and one of the function keys is one, or finding the terminal program and starting it, usually using the graphical user interface is a simple way to do, is one way, and a simple way to do that. Now I have a command line interface, and here it is circumscribed by this window right here. So let's take a look at it. First of all, what is this thing? I can go to Help and About and find out what this is. So this is the GNOME terminal. Someone will look at that and they'll say that's pronounced GNOME in the English language. Yes, I know that, but Linux people are weird, so it's GNOME. I don't think anyone calls it GNOME. People might laugh at you if you call it that, but some people say GNOME anyway, even though the official pronunciation is not, and blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to get into pronunciation arguments with anybody over any of this stuff because it's all over the place. But anyway, this is the terminal emulator, and there is the version number there and some other information about it. So I'm not terribly interested in that. We'll close it up. Now we know what we're using. We're using the GNOME terminal emulator to emulate, which is kind of like simulating a terminal. That is, it appears to be a Linux terminal and behaves exactly like one to the software that is running within it. A couple things to show you here. I can open another terminal right here, and so if I choose to do that, I have to choose which profile I want to use. I'll show you profiles in a moment, but click one, and there I've opened up another terminal window. Second thing that I can do here is I can open a tab with a certain profile, and so here is one tab. And so I'll just type a command in there, which we'll be talking about here in a little while. So I see some content, and I go back here, and that one doesn't have anything because that's a different tab. And so I've got various tabs here. I can also create tabs using this button right here, and let's see, what does that do? That just switches me from one to the other. Notice Alt-1 and Alt-2 then also are hotkeys. Alt-1 takes me to the left tab, Alt-2 to the next one. Okay, so you can queue yourself up some tabs in here to be doing different things or working in different areas of the system, as we'll see later. I'll close that for now and go back to just the one, and so the tab disappears because it's the only one here. Okay, close terminal, close all terminals, yes. All right, next, within the edit menu, you'll see that we have some various things, preferences and profile preferences right here. So let's touch profile preferences. And actually, I'm going to close that. Let's go back to preferences by itself and take a look at profiles. And you'll see I have two profiles here. You probably only have one right now called unnamed. I have one called Perry because I clicked the new button and I made myself a new profile and then worked on it. And notice that once you create a profile, you can change what the default is when launching a new terminal. And so for mine, it's the one called Perry. So why would you want to do that? Why would you want to mess with these profiles? And the answer is, I can go in here to, I can go in here to Profile Preferences, and I can change things like colors. So rather than using colors from the system theme, I changed mine to white on black. Okay, with a little more transparency than was the default, and with a different built-in color scheme palette. You see these are all just choices that you can make. And so if you have your own profile, you can kind of set it that way. If you have multiple profiles, it gives you the ability to execute a command, execute commands in one. You can open a tab, say, with a different profile that looks different. So there's the unnamed one. So there's mine, there's the unnamed one. Notice they have a very different look and feel. Okay. And that way kind of differentiate what you're working on by what the background looks like or what colors there are or whatever. Okay, so anyway, if you want to customize a little bit, that's a way to do that. Other things here. Let's see, view, nothing too exciting here, but notice you've got Control plus, you have to hold down the Shift key to actually execute that, but that zooms in. Control minus zooms out, and Control 0 is normal size. So what does that do? Well, let's see, Control Shift plus makes it bigger, Control minus makes it smaller, okay, and then Control 0 to make it back to its nominal size. Now in your profile you can change the size of the text and that kind of stuff, but you know, if you're, you know, let's say you're used to working with your laptop plugged into a bigger monitor, and you know, then you so you have it set a certain way, and then you take your laptop on the road, it has a really small screen, it looks a little small for you, or you forgot your glasses, you can just make it bigger. So anyway, other things to know there. Search, don't really need that right now. Terminal, notice you can change the profile, set character encoding, don't really need to do that for now, but later. Here's some defaults for the number of characters wide times the number of characters high in your profile, and then there's help available for all the features that I just went through. So that's basically it, and probably all that you really need to know about this to kind of get started with it. So last thing that I want to show you in this video before we get into some specific commands is I want to show you a way that you get help when you're on a Linux system. This is going to seem kind of a little bit, maybe a little bit backwards or antiquated or something. The way you're used to getting help as a computing professional right now is that you go to Google and you type something in and you see what other people say about it, right? That's your main help mechanism. That can also work for Linux, but there is a tried and true older method of getting help on Unix-based and Linux-based systems, which is the manual. Long pause. You don't read manuals, right? Hey, I don't read books. Yeah, I know. But the manual is actually very handy. You can get to the manual very easily, always from the command line, and this is the main way that things are documented. You must become familiar with using the manual and learning to read the manual entries, okay? And accessing that from the command line is very easy. So this is the first command that we're going to learn, which is the command called manual, okay? And it's executed by typing its shorter version, man, M-A-N, followed by the thing that you want to read about that's in the manual, okay? So that's kind of nice. It beats a physical book, right? A physical book, you have to look at the contents or the index to find stuff. Here you just say what you want to do. If I don't say anything and I hit enter, it says, what manual page do you want? Okay, so I have to give it more information. So I'll type, I want to read the manual about the manual. How's that? Let's start there. And as I do that, I get this man page interface right here that is telling us how you use this command. Now this is going to look like an awful lot to read at this point because you've got man and you've got, you know, all this stuff. It's like, what is all of this? Yada 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 after this. The crucial thing here is that you're going to have man followed by the page that you want to actually display. But we'll talk about what all of these things mean a little bit later as we start looking at certain commands and the synopsis. You'll get to where you can read this synopsis very easily and you can see, okay, well, it looks like I can execute the command this way or that way. So this starts to tell you a little bit about it. However, this is not all the content. This is just one page of content. So how do you navigate in this manual? Here are the essential things that you need to know. First, down arrow and up arrow are your friends, right? One line at a time. That's down arrow. And now this is up arrow. I'm just pressing it repeatedly, okay? So you should do the same thing. Up arrow, down arrow. That's the first thing to know. Second is, how do you go forward and back more than one line at a time? Well, take a look. W goes up and Z goes down. You say, why W and Z? I don't know, but you know, put your fingers over there. If you're used to playing games on your PC, it's probably pretty similar, but instead of W and S, it's W and Z. So Z is page down. I'm just hitting Z repeatedly right now. and W is page up, okay? So, like so, okay? So you can kind of page through this thing and read all about it. So why would you want to do this? Because you need to know how to use some of these commands. Some of them you won't ever use the manual at all because you'll have kind of what you need. But others, you'll find that they become much more flexible when you do a little bit of reading and say, oh, I didn't know I could do that with this tool. Okay, these command line tools are going to be your friend. They're extremely powerful, especially when you start chaining them together. They become very, very powerful. And so you will be learning to read the manual pages. Okay, so anyway, this is the manual page on the manual itself, which may seem a little bit silly, but there are many ways that you would make use of it. For example, one command that I've used a couple of times just to get some output on the screen is this ls command, which is a way of listing files. We're going to look at that here in a few minutes. But if I type man space ls, it'll give me the manual page for the ls command. So, okay, when you've had enough fun with the manual page, how do you exit? You can see it down here. You can press H for help to learn more commands, okay, to navigate these, but I've given you the essential ones, W, Z, and the arrows, and then this final one, which is Q. You need to know that one, Q to quit, okay? It gets us right back to the command line where we started. And so, just to demonstrate again the use of this, but with a different command, there's our manual page for the ls, which means list directory contents. We'll look at that in a few minutes. Here you get a synopsis. This one's a little easier to read. You've got the letters L and S with a space, followed by possibly, that's what the square brackets mean, possibly an option, followed by possibly more options. That's what the ... means. And then all of that followed by a file specification. We'll talk about that. And then possibly other stuff, okay? Other file specifications. So description, list information about the file. So it tells you what it does. And again, you can line down or page down as you like through this to see all of the different options that can be applied to this. And we're going to use a few of them here in a few minutes when we look at the ls command, okay? So there's that, Q to quit, and I'm done with the manual. So that's it for this video. The next video in the series then, we'll start actually executing some more interesting commands on the command line now that we know how to get there.